Hi, Maxine here from rootsnorthernireland.com. Today we're going to, this is part 3 in the series, not including the introduction. We're going to do 10 mistakes to avoid when doing your family tree. Now, everyone makes mistakes, even, well, especially me. I assure you, you will make mistakes. You will at some point think, why did I not? But here's a few wee tips to help you avoid mistakes. Number 1, forgetting to record information on family history forms. Now it's not just, get a wee piece of paper and write things down. That's fine, you can do that too, but it gets a wee bit messy after a while. But there are set forms for filling out certain information. Like there are forms that for census forms, and you can just fill out the details if you want. You can also print it and whatnot, but there's also, there's that, and then there's, when you do your research, there's way for logging where you've been, what you've done, that type of thing. And there are forms that are available, and some of those are available on my website for free for download. Just go ahead, go on over there and you download them. It's free. Again, that's rootsnorthernireland.com. Okay, so that's really, really important. Not only will help you follow it everything, but it'll also help any future generation follow on your work. If you do everything, document everything properly, then when they go to take it over for you someday, they'll know what you've already done and they'll be able to continue on. Number 2, not taking your ancestors' siblings into account. It's really important because siblings, you may be looking at your granda and he's got like 3 or 4 brothers or sisters or whatever, and you kind of not worry about them. You just kind of keep going up. But those siblings later on would have very important clues. On a census, for instance, you might find the parents of your ancestor living with one of the siblings. So to look for that sibling, you'll be able to find the parent. They're very familial back then. Everybody lived, they all lived together. So, kind of worked that as the parents got older, they moved with the kids. So it's not taking, overlooking the maiden names of your females in your family. Big mistake. It's easy to think of our female ancestors by their married names, but record that information. Yes, absolutely. But do not disregard their birth name. It's incredibly important. Birth names can provide a valuable clue for future reference, research as well, because a lot of times the families use the mother's maiden name as a middle name for their children. For instance, one of my great grannies was Margaret Lowry, and she gave that name. She had 9 sons, and she gave that name Lowry to most of them. Unfortunately, not to my granda for some reason. My granda didn't get the Lowry, but most of his brothers did. So, and that's a big clue. And then nowadays, even she has a great grandson who also has the Lowry name. So it's continued on, which is kind of neat. Number 4, assuming you're related to someone who was famous. Like I'm a Watt, right? My name's Watt, as far as I know. My name's a Watt. So, I could just jump to the conclusion, well, James Watt was a famous inventor. I must be related to him. And then try to go to him and go down. Doesn't work that way, right? It's not a good approach, and it is impossible to work with. Always start with yourself and go back. And if you happen to be related to someone famous, that's brilliant. But don't start with them and come back. Next thing is skipping a generation. In lots of families, it's very, very common to have the same name running through the male ancestors. This can trip you up. Now, believe me, this can really trip you up if you're not careful, leading you to list someone as the father when he is actually the grandfather. So record as many dates as you can and take careful note of name places like homes and that kind of stuff to help avoid this from happening. Don't even get me started on my great Uncle Gerald, or my great Uncle Gerald, or my Uncle Gerald, or my 2 cousins who are called Gerald. And they're all Watt. All these are Gerald Watts. So again, you have to be very careful of which generation you're dealing with, because the names are quite often the same. 6, assuming your family name is spelt only one way. Well, that's not true. I mean, you have to, we're relying on our ancestors and the people who recorded those events. You were human and they were prone to mistakes, and there were a lot of times things were written down as how they sounded, and so rather than how they were. So for instance, Watt could be Watts or Waters with 1 T, Larry can be Larry with an E in it. Make sure you check all the variations of the name, because and yeah, it's time consuming, but if you're going to miss facts if you don't. One thing you could do is doing your research is using the asterisk. So yeah, so whenever for instance, if you're doing a search for what and you put an asterisk at it, then what and all the different variants of that will come up. Or if you're doing, like if you do John and then do an asterisk, then it'll come up with anybody called Johns, Johnson, or Johnstone. So it's a wee bit of a thing. Number 7, the ever popular jumping to conclusions. Genealogy is about information and proving that that information is correct. Start your research again with yourself and work backwards, one generation at a time. The key to success is to prove the positive link between one generation to the other before you move on. Get that link proven first. And again, like I can speak the talk, but you know, I did a search one time. I found I found a death record for Frances Dillon. Got all excited. She was the wife of Joseph Dillon, and I thought, whoa, addresses were around the same. It was absolutely brilliant. Got all excited. Thought that was my great granny, and then so because Frances is my great great granny, right? Again, I was thrilled, but I was wrong. Who would have thought that Frances' husband Joseph had a son in his first marriage, also called Joseph, who, yep, guess what, married a Frances. So the person I thought was my great granny was actually her stepson's wife. Again, proof. You need proof. The wrong family. Believe me, this can happen very easily. If you jump to conclusions, which is mistake number 7, you can easily set off in the completely wrong direction. If you don't look for name variations, which is mistake number 8, you end up researching many generations of the wrong family. Do not start working on the next generation of research unless you have complete proof of that link. I know the temptation is strong to jump, but it may mean hours of work for no reason. Number 9, taking information on an old family tree as fact. With the internet, is a wonderful, wonderful place, but it's also very, very misleading, and it's a big tool to control. And you should be very wary of which sites you rely on. Think like Wikipedia. Wikipedia, people can post all kinds of things, and that does not mean that they're 100% right. And that's the same as when you go to something like ancestry.co.uk or ancestry.com or whatever. People have posted their family trees on there. And yes, it's brilliant. It's brilliant to have these resources and whatnot. But again, take it at face value. You don't know that person has put in the right information. So again, if you can't prove a fact, mark that down as unproven somehow, because until you can prove it, and just because someone else says it isn't proof. Document. You know, you can go on all day about the same thing. The biggest mistakes you could ever make is not documenting where you found your information. I know this because I do my research, and believe me, I've realized how important it is, because I've made lots of mistakes by not documenting my sources properly. I put aside my research for years, right? And then I picked it back up, and then I was reading it and thinking, wait a minute, how do I know that? Where did I get that from? I didn't document it. So again, document everything. You owe it to the future. It's brilliant that you're doing your family tree, absolutely fantastic. But you owe it to the future generations, not just to do it, but to be accurate.